My name is Benito Mussolini. You know me as Il Duce, the inventor of fascism, Hitler's ally who dragged Italy into ruin. But I was not born a monster. I was once a socialist, a teacher, a man who believed in justice for the working class. This is my confession, not to seek forgiveness, but to show you how a revolutionary can become the very thing he once fought against. Because understanding how fascism is born is the only way to prevent its return. I was born in 1883 in Predapio, a small village in northern Italy. My father, Alessandro, was a blacksmith and a socialist. He filled my young mind with dreams of revolution and justice for the poor. My mother, Rosa, was a devout Catholic schoolteacher who tried to balance his radical ideas with faith and discipline. I was caught between these two worlds from birth, the hammer and the cross, revolution and tradition. Even as a child, I was rebellious, violent, quick to anger. I stabbed a classmate with a penknife when I was 10. The seeds of my future were already planted in that small village forge. My mother sent me to a Catholic boarding school, hoping the priests would tame my wild nature. Instead, I became more rebellious. I led student strikes, fought with teachers, and was eventually expelled for stabbing another student. The priests called me the devil incarnate. Perhaps they were right. I rejected their God and embraced my father's socialism with the fervor of a convert. I would create my own religion, the religion of the state, with myself as its prophet. I became a school teacher like my mother, but my heart belonged to revolution. I joined the Socialist Party and threw myself into the cause with passionate intensity. I organized strikes, gave fiery speeches, and wrote articles demanding justice for the oppressed. I truly believed I was fighting for the downtrodden, for a better world. How naive I was. I didn't yet understand that power corrupts even the purest intentions, and that the road to hell is paved with revolutionary dreams. To avoid military service, I fled to Switzerland, where I lived as a vagrant, sleeping under bridges, begging for food. But even in poverty, I continued my revolutionary work. I met other exiled socialists, read Marx and Nietzsche, and began to develop my own political philosophy. I was arrested multiple times for vagrancy and political agitation. These were the years that forged my character. I learned that survival requires ruthlessness, that weakness invites destruction. The comfortable bourgeois socialists back in Italy had no idea what real struggle meant. I returned to Italy and quickly rose through the Socialist Party ranks. My oratory skills were unmatched. I could move crowds to tears or fury with my words. I became editor of the socialist newspaper Avanti and used it to spread my revolutionary message. I was the rising star of Italian socialism, the voice of the oppressed masses. But I was growing impatient with the party's moderation, their endless debates while the people suffered. I began to believe that only violence could bring real change. Democracy was too slow, too weak. The masses needed a strong leader to guide them to their destiny. When the Great War began, the Socialist Party opposed Italy's entry. But I saw opportunity in the chaos. War would sweep away the old order and create space for something new. I broke with my socialist comrades and demanded Italy join the war. They expelled me from the party, calling me a traitor. They were right. I had betrayed socialism, but I believed I was serving a higher cause. I founded my own newspaper, Il Popolo d'Italia, funded by French money and Italian industrialists who wanted war. I had tasted the intoxicating power of being my own master, beholden to no party or ideology except my own will. I enlisted as a private and served on the Alpine front. I was a good soldier, brave, disciplined, leading by example. In 1917, a grenade exploded during training, filling my body with shrapnel. As I lay bleeding in that military hospital, I had a vision of my destiny. Italy needed a new kind of leader, not a king or a socialist, but a man of the people, who understood both war and revolution. The old Italy was dying in the trenches. I would create a new one from its ashes. In 1919, I founded the Fasci di Combattimento, the combat squads. We were a small group of war veterans, socialists, nationalists, and adventurers, united by our contempt for the weak liberal state. We wore black shirts in honor of our fallen comrades, and used violence against our enemies. I called it fascism, from the Roman faces, the bundle of rods that symbolized authority. We were neither left nor right, but something entirely new. A revolutionary movement that would sweep away both capitalism and socialism, and create a new order based on national unity and the will to power. Italy was in chaos. Strikes, occupations, socialist revolution seemed imminent. The liberal government was paralyzed. My black shirts became the unofficial army of the middle class and industrialists. Breaking strikes and beating socialists, we burned down socialist newspapers, attacked union halls, and forced castor oil down the throats of our enemies. I told myself we were saving Italy from Bolshevism, but the truth was simply, violence had become my drug, and power my only goal. Each act of brutality made the next one easier. In 1921, I was elected to parliament as part of a nationalist coalition. I had learned to play the democratic game while preparing to destroy it. I made alliances with conservatives who thought they could use me, spoke of law and order while my squads terrorized the countryside. I was becoming respectable, but respectability was just another weapon. The liberal politicians were fools. They invited the wolf into the sheepfold, thinking they could tame it with parliamentary procedures and constitutional niceties. In October 1922, I organized the March on Rome, 30,000 black shirts converging on the capital to demand power. It was a bluff. The army could have stopped us easily. But King Victor Emmanuel III lost his nerve and invited me to form a government rather than risk civil war. I arrived in Rome by train, wearing a bowler hat and morning coat, a picture of respectability. The crowds cheered as I became prime minister at age 39. I had conquered Italy without firing a shot. Democracy had committed suicide, and I was its executioner. In 1924, the socialist deputy, Giacomo Matteotti, denounced our electoral fraud in parliament. He was kidnapped and murdered by my followers. Though I didn't order it directly, everyone knew I was responsible. For months, it seemed my government might fall. The opposition walked out of parliament. The press attacked me. Even some fascists wavered. But I had learned that in politics, audacity trumps legality. I took full responsibility and dared my enemies to remove me. They lacked the courage. From that moment, I knew I was untouchable. Between 1925 and 1929, I systematically destroyed Italian democracy. I banned opposition parties, censored the press, created a secret police, and established the cult of Il Duce. I became not just a leader but a living god. My image was everywhere. My words were law. My will was Italy's destiny. I convinced myself I was serving the nation, but the truth was that I had become addicted to absolute power. Every dictator tells himself he is indispensable, that only he can save his people. It is the most seductive and dangerous lie of all. In 1929, I signed the Lateran Treaty with Pope Pius XI, ending the Roman question that had plagued Italy since unification. I gave the Vatican independence and made Catholicism the state religion. The Pope called me a man sent by Providence. Even God, it seemed, had blessed my rule. This was my greatest diplomatic triumph. I had reconciled church and state, fascism and faith, but it was also a Faustian bargain. I had legitimized my dictatorship with divine authority, making myself accountable to no earthly power. I created the corporate state, a third way between capitalism and socialism, where workers and employers would cooperate under state guidance. It was my answer to the Great Depression, my gift to the world. Foreign intellectuals praised it as the future of civilization, but it was largely a facade. Real power remained with me and my cronies. The corporations were just another tool of control, a way to make dictatorship seem modern and scientific. I had learned that people will accept tyranny if you dress it up in impressive theories and bureaucratic complexity. In 1935, I invaded Ethiopia to build an African empire and distract from domestic problems. I used poison gas against spear-carrying tribesmen and called it civilization. The League of Nations imposed sanctions, but I turned this into a propaganda victory. Italy against the world. Fascism against decadent democracy. When we conquered Addis Ababa, I proclaimed the Italian Empire and myself as emperor. I stood on the balcony of Palazzo Venezia before 1 million cheering Romans, drunk on power and applause. I thought I was Caesar reborn, but I was just another tyrant heading for a fall. I sent 70,000 troops to help Franco win the Spanish Civil War. It was a chance to test my military and spread fascism across Europe. But the war dragged on, costing lives and money Italy couldn't afford. Worse, it pushed me closer to Hitler, whom I had once dismissed as a crude imitator. I was becoming the junior partner in an alliance I thought I controlled. My Spanish adventure was the beginning of my downfall, though I was too proud to see it. In 1936, I formed the Rome-Berlin Axis with Hitler. I thought I was his equal, but he was already the dominant partner. When he invaded Poland in 1939, I kept Italy neutral. We weren't ready for war. But watching his victories in France, I couldn't resist joining what seemed like a winning side. In June 1940, I declared war on Britain and France, stabbing them in the back as they were already defeated. It was the worst decision of my life, but my ego wouldn't let me remain a spectator while Hitler reshaped Europe. Everything went wrong. My invasion of Greece was a humiliating failure. Hitler had to rescue me. My African empire crumbled before British forces. My navy was crippled at Taranto. My armies were destroyed in Russia. Italy became Germany's puppet, and I became Hitler's lackey. The Italian people, who had once cheered my victories, now cursed my name as Allied bombs fell on their cities. I had promised them glory and given them only death and defeat. The man who had conquered Ethiopia couldn't even defend Sicily. In July 1943, my own fascist Grand Council voted me out of power. King Victor Emmanuel had me arrested, the same king who had made me prime minister 21 years earlier. The Germans rescued me and made me head of a puppet state in northern Italy, but I was finished. I spent my final years as Hitler's prisoner, watching my life's work crumble. In April 1945, I was captured by communist partisans while trying to flee to Switzerland. They shot me and my mistress, Clara Petacci, then hung our bodies upside down in a Milan gas station for the crowds to spit on. The man who had made himself a god died like a dog in the gutter. I created fascism from the ashes of democracy, convincing millions that freedom was weakness and that only a strong leader could save them. I showed the world how a charismatic demagogue could destroy a constitutional system from within, using its own laws and institutions against it. My legacy is not the empire I built, but the warning I represent, that democracy is fragile, that it can be murdered by those who claim to save it. Remember the victims of my wars, the Ethiopians gassed in their mountains, the Spaniards killed in their civil war, the Italians who died for my vanity, the Jews I handed over to Hitler's death camps. Remember that fascism begins not with jackboots, but with promises. Promises to make the nation great again, to restore order, to give simple answers to complex problems. I was not born evil. I became evil through choices, step by step, compromise by compromise. The next fascist will not look like me or speak like me, but he will make the same promises and use the same methods. Watch for him. Resist him, because the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and the alternative is the abyss into which I led my nation.